Audio sync. Hey guys, well, it appears Intel might be on the up and up. They're currently in the process of switching their CEO. And if you haven't been aware, Intel, for the past while now, about the past year or so, they really haven't been doing good. And by really haven't been doing good, they reported an annual loss of $19 billion in 2024. For a company who was leading the CPU industry for such a long time, they started to really tank. Even though they were a completely well-known name, and they still are now, they were effectively dethroned in a lot of different areas. Now, they're changing their attitude up really fast to catch up with the game. So we're going to go ahead and cover it in today's video. Let's get right into it. Okay, so we're going to start off with this article by Reuters. The new Intel CEO is plotting an overhaul of manufacturing and AI operations, and I don't really blame him. So Intel's incoming CEO, Tan, has considered significant changes to its chip manufacturing methods and artificial intelligence strategies ahead of his return to the company on Tuesday. Do I blame him? No. Intel has honestly been lacking in the AI industry for quite some time, especially in comparison to some of the competitors like Nvidia. Like, Intel definitely has GPUs. They definitely have the technology to run AI models. It's not bad technology, but they haven't really struck gold yet. And their chips just aren't widely used in the AI industry. And even then, as well, they're also starting to lag behind on what they're known for: processors, CPUs. They're starting to lag behind in that industry too, especially in gaming computer setups, where in handheld gaming computer setups as well, where a majority of these setups are starting to move to AMD and AMD GPUs as well. Because honestly, sometimes they're more powerful than the Intel equivalents. And even in the data center environments, which are like the biggest consumers of CPUs, they're also moving to AMD, or in some cases, ARM. So I don't blame Intel for wanting to change a bunch of stuff because, again, they're starting to lag behind, and they have been lacking behind. In 2024, they reported an annual loss of $19 billion, which was its first since 1986. That's a bad sign, I should say. That's a pretty bad sign. That's not good. So they're going to rethink the entire thing. So two people familiar with Tan's thinking told Reuters that in a sweeping bid to revive the technology giant, they're making a new trajectory, which includes reconstructing the company's approach to AI and staff cuts to address what Tan views as slow-moving and bloated middle management, which is something that does plague big enterprises, is middle management that's slow moving, doesn't get stuff done fast enough, and it's kind of important to cut that stuff out, especially in such a fast-paced and fast-moving industry as tech, especially if you're trying to get into the AI market, which basically has changes every single day. Like, no other part of tech right now really has as much volatility as AI because so many improvements are happening so constantly, especially because it's become a sort of war between the US and China to see who does it best. It's become a thing in a lot of different areas, both in like the economic sense, it's super important. There's a lot of companies who are trying to capitalize on it. It's important politically. Governments are funding this kind of stuff. There's a lot of different areas going on here. So if they want to try to get into the AI game, they really do have to play catch up. So I don't blame this guy for trying to cut out the middle management layer, especially if it's so slow moving. Because, well, again, in an industry so fast paced, you need to be able to get stuff done, not tomorrow, today. One thing he's also doing is he's planning on revamping the company's manufacturing operations, which at one time only made chips for Intel, but are also now being repurposed to make semiconductors for outside clients, such as Nvidia, which is actually kind of interesting. I'm kind of surprised about that. So apparently, they're going to start making chips for some outside clients, which admittedly is actually pretty lucrative. So that would probably put him like head to head, like Intel head to head with like TSMC. So it'd be like Intel versus TSMC for who does the best chip manufacturing, which is honestly a really interesting move. I wasn't expecting that. So obviously the plans are still being formulated and could change, these sources said, and obviously these are like sources from Reuters, pretty reputable, but you don't know if it's actually going to be what's going to happen, so we'll see. The Intel stock rose more than 8% in midday trading, so basically there's definitely a little bit of optimism going back into Intel. And at a town hall meeting following his appointment as CEO last week, he told employees that the company will need to make tough decisions, quote unquote, according to two other people briefed on the meeting. So basically, he's saying, in other words, at least from what I can tell, he's firing some people. He's firing a lot of people, I think. The other thing that points to that is the fact that one of the things that not Tan actually, sorry, a semiconductor industry expert rather, Dylan Patel, said that a big problem under the former CEO, which was Pat, some guy named Pat, was that he was too nice. He didn't want to fire a bunch of middle management in the way that he needed to. So apparently, I'm just saying the signs point to the new CEO firing a bunch of people. And I don't necessarily blame him if the middle management is too bloated and stuff's not getting done fast enough because you can't get the needed approvals to do so or whatever. I I don't blame him for wanting to fire some people and try to clean it all up. I get it. So the former CEO of chip design this guy was the former CEO, the new CEO was the former CEO of a chip design software firm called Cadence and a tech investor. And he was also a member of Intel's board until he resigned last August. Now he's just returning as CEO. So he's set to take over the American icon after a decade of bad decisions by 3 different CEOs in which it failed to build chips for smartphones and missed surging demand for AI processors, allowing competitors like ARM and Nvidia to dominate those markets. And not only that, but ARM isn't the only one who makes ARM processors. There's other companies who use the ARM standard to make ARM processors. So it's such a big, diverse industry, the semiconductor industry. Intel really dropped the ball. They really, really, really did. So, basically, long story short, he's going to try to bring things on the up and up, and I'm curious to see if it'll work. If this is the year that Intel finally gets fully back up on the up and up, that would be really interesting to see, especially because for such a long time, they've just, simply put, they've kind of sucked. Like, I'm sorry, but they really fumbled the bag here. They did. There's no other way of putting it. They screwed up for a really long time. They couldn't get into the smartphone chip industry. They couldn't get into the AI chip industry. And they let ARM and Nvidia just take over, and AMD as well. Intel kind of fumbled here. So I'm curious to see if what this guy's going to do actually leads to, genuine change. So he's also planning on improving performance at its manufacturing arm, Intel Foundry, which makes chips for other design companies like Microsoft and Amazon. So he's planning to improve the performance by aggressively wooing new customers. Basically, let's supercharge the sales team, bring a bunch of people in, because a lot of new companies want their own processors, especially if you and honestly, making your own processors, it makes sense if you're doing really high scale tasks. It for some of these companies like Microsoft and Amazon, it makes sense that they want their own processors, because when you're doing highly specialized tasks for like highly specialized markets, getting your own processors wholesale by a factory, it's, you know what, it kind of makes sense. He will also plan on restarting plans to produce chips that power AI servers, and to look at areas beyond servers in several areas such as software, robotics, and AI models. We might actually see an Intel AI model, which is interesting. Nobody really knows Intel for software. Everybody knows Intel for hardware. So that's interesting if they start taking a shift and going more into the software industry. That would actually be very interesting to see, because nobody really knows Intel for software. Like, other than maybe drivers, right? But that doesn't really count as software. That's just counting more as like a software extension for the hardware that Intel built. So I feel like my point still stands. Everybody knows Intel for hardware. But at the end of the day, I am genuinely really curious to see what happens here. If Intel gets on the up and up, that would be interesting to see. Maybe they'll get themselves in this AI race, or maybe they were too late, especially because some of these things have kind of been set in stone who the main competitors are. Like, for example, the US government established a sort of AI partnership between, Nvidia and Microsoft and OpenAI, and like some of the key competitors in this industry have already been set in stone. It could be that Intel got in way too late, but maybe they can save the fumble. Who knows? We'll see as time goes on. That's about it for today's video. Let me know what you think in the comments down below. I especially thought this was interesting because, again, Intel's been fumbling it so badly lately. So it's interesting to see them take a really big shift in direction. Thank you guys for watching. Like, comment, subscribe. Let me know what you think in the comments down below. Take care, you guys, and remember to stay safe out there.